Hello, we are back. Hello, Watsonville, Capitola, Live Oak, Scotts Valley, and the San Lorenzo Valley, too. And may I also give a shout out to Salinas and Monterey. KSQD and KSQT's signal are reaching to where community radio has rarely dared to go. Many voices, one station. Welcome to Talk of the Bay. We do have a show for you today at the 5 o'clock hour. Tonight, we are talking about the surveillance state. What is it? How is it making its way into our lives and the lives of our loved ones? What is government doing with all that data it's collecting? And how is the surveillance state making itself known here in Surf City and beyond? I have a studio full of guests. ACLU Chair Peter Gelblum, local activist Steve Pleisch, and Santa Cruz candidate for Mayor Amy Chen Mills are all here in the KSQD studios. I am your host, Chris Crone. Welcome to KSQD's Talk of the Bay 90.7 and KSQD.org and KSQT Prunedale. There will be a national week of action against automated license plate readers, ALPRs for short, beginning August 16th. There's great concern in Santa Cruz and all across the country, actually, about the fact that we are being watched. ACLU Santa Cruz Board Chair Peter Gelblum is with us today. Welcome to Talk of the Bay, Peter.
Thanks, Chris.
Community activist and homeless advocate Steve Pleisch is also here. Steve, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thank you, Chris. Happy to be here.
Current candidate for mayor of the city of Santa Cruz and Get the Flock Out activist Amy Chen Mills is also in the KSQD radio house. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Happy to be here, too.
Merriam-Webster Dictionary says that surveillance is the careful and close watch of a person, place, or group. Common methods include closed-circuit television cameras, data tracking, and physical observation. Peter Gelblum, chair of the Santa Cruz ACLU of Northern California, can you set the stage for us? Two-part question. Why are flock cameras being contested all over California? And is it possible that we are also at the same time compromising our public safety by eliminating them?
First of all, I'm going to challenge the definition. Flock cameras are not careful surveillance at all. They're broad, totally not careful. They're catching everything and everybody. They're being contested all over California for the same reason that they were contested here. And Santa Cruz has the great distinction, worked on by everybody in this room, to cancel a contract with Flock. And they're being canceled because people are waking up to what they really are. They're indiscriminate as opposed to careful, watching of every single vehicle and human and pet and bicycle that goes by one of these cameras. When they're here, and thankfully they're no longer here, they track everywhere you go, everywhere there's a camera, everybody that goes by, and they keep that information for anywhere from 3 hours in New Hampshire to 30 days in many jurisdictions in California to a year, and I think there's some places where it's unlimited. They just never erase this stuff. And they track everywhere you go if you go by a camera. And with AI in particular, they can put together your route, where you went every time you went by this camera. They can trace your route. They can see if you're going to a doctor. They can see if you're going to a protest. They can see if you're going to a Planned Parenthood. They can see wherever you're going. And people didn't realize it. First of all, people don't even know the cameras are there. Unless you know what to look for, you don't even see them. You just drive by an intersection, and these things are sitting up there. Right. There's no cop car. There's no nothing, just a camera. And people, I think, were not aware of what they were and what they're doing. And there's an uprising against them as people become more aware. That's the simple reason. I think when people are aware, most people don't like them and want to get rid of them. And I don't think, the second question, we're not compromising public safety. They don't do anything, of course, to deter crime or prevent crime in any way, shape, or form. They may have some, I'm not going to say that, they do have some limited benefit to law enforcement in solving certain crimes, in catching people maybe a little sooner than they otherwise would. But there is no, and I mean no, statistical evidence that they deter or lower crime rates in any way, shape, or form.
Amy Chen Mills of Get the Flock Out. Who owns Flock, and how come you got involved in this early on, this campaign?
You know, I just started seeing articles about the flock cameras, and I want to also mention that there are other ALPR, automatic license plate reader companies out there like Axon and Motorola that we need to be cautious about as well. But the violations around this particular company, Flock, were so egregious that I thought there's no way that our city residents can actually be approving of what's happening if they were to know what's happening, because we had police tracking women who were seeking abortions going out of state. So we had Texas police tracking women using these flock cameras. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, oh my goodness, like this is a disaster for human rights and civil rights for people with the current administration especially. But there are also a lot of Republicans and conservatives who don't like the idea of being tracked this way at any time. And I think I have just a natural aversion to this kind of surveillance that I thought most Americans actually had, which is like, do we want to be like China? We think of China as a mass surveillance state. There are people of color I would mention who would say, well, we've been surveilled as populations throughout the entire history of this nation. So sometimes people object to that term mass surveillance. There's always been surveillance, and now we're upset because it's just people who are white are getting surveilled. But we should all be upset about this kind of surveillance, and I think we don't want to be like China right now. I think there are 5,000 cities that have installed these cameras. There are so many of them that in some cities you really can't go anywhere, like Atlanta, without being tracked. And so I have a natural aversion, but then all these violations that I was seeing in the news made me think, you know what, I think if people understood the violations that are happening, we've had 20 cops get arrested for using them to stalk women, whether they're ex-girlfriends or ex-partners or someone they just met at an event. They're stalking them and chasing after them on the highway and pulling them over because they're attracted to them. Like this just happened in Florida. So all of these, there's way more. Like this is the tip of the iceberg.
I know you've had some pushback from a certain police officer that you and I both know. Tell us what you think about what's their argument. What was the police argument in favor of the flock cameras, the one that we both know?
You mean in the city?
Well, a former police officer here that.
A former officer.
But who you just recently talked to and was giving you pushback on flock cameras.
Right. Well, police, of course they want these cameras, because who doesn't want all the tools and toys and equipment that you could possibly use to, one, keep your force safe, two, people call it a force multiplier on the police side, to make your life easier in terms of trying to catch people. But I think what we're dealing with here, and this former officer in our police department who's very for the cameras still, and I think a lot of times police don't know about all of these violations. They're not being exposed to this news. They're getting a lot of propaganda from the flock. I mean, they're mostly talking to flock employees and flock salespeople. And I think what we're facing right now is that police are not used to protecting a population from the state. They are not used to that. And that's what we're dealing with right now. And that's a conversation that needs to be had with our police force and with our community is, now that we've got an authoritarian government, which side are we on, and who's on it, right? On who's on which side. And we need to have that conversation and be looking at that very carefully. And I don't think police think that they're working for authoritarians, but in this case, I see someone has an objection. And we should air that, right? In this case, it's if they were to look also at some of the data that we've looked at, some police chiefs have actually canceled the contracts themselves because of violations on the part of this company. And I feel like all the companies would be similarly pressured to share data the way that Flock has shared data.
Thank you, Amy. Peter, hold that for a second. I want to get to Steve Plach. You penned an article in Lookout Santa Cruz a couple of weeks ago discussing surveillance and AI. Can you sort of summarize your thoughts there from the opinion piece?
Yeah, certainly, Chris. And initially, a shout out to Jody Beal, who's my editor at Lookout. She really helped polish that article. That article actually dealt in a very general sense about how artificial intelligence is being used to assist already existing surveillance tools. For instance, cameras, surveillance, facial recognition, body cams, things like that. And they did a study at University of Michigan where they're able to use AI to review thousands of hours of police body cameras to generate a database about whether or not police were actually acting improperly or illegally in the constitutional protections. And they found that there were some violations that they could identify. Now, the problem with AI is that the people who are developing it, they don't know what the potential of it is. You know, they have no idea about, what it can do in terms of being an AI assist. There are some benign uses. For instance, City of Cupertino has AI assisted on their body camera. They're used for translation purposes. That's probably as benign as you can get in terms of using AI in conjunction with body cameras. But no one knows what the potential of it is, and it's troubling. If you saw recently an article in the paper where one of the open source companies had a model test program that actually invaded another company, and they all laughed it off. So, no harm was done. Can you imagine that, on its own, becoming self-aware at some point, that this model test program actually went out of its own open source into something else? That is really scary to me. And the potential for application to surveillance is something that we don't understand. I don't understand it. None of the experts understand it. And it's something that we really should take a look at. I really enjoy the fact that people are focusing on ALPRs and they're focusing on the egregious conduct of Flock, and they should do that. But in a broader sense, AI, I think, is the real danger because the potential for mass surveillance and really looking at people all the time and collecting their data is virtually unlimited and more fundamentally unknown.
Peter Gelblum, chair of Santa Cruz County Chair in Northern California of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. Jump in.
Well, there's so much to talk about. In addition to the misuses and abuses that Amy was talking about, there's also lots of mistakes, maybe honest mistakes, but mistakes. There have been dozens of people who have been pulled over because the ALPRs wrongfully flagged their vehicle as having done something wrong. And I think that was one of the main reasons that the Los Angeles Police Department just canceled their contract with Flock, or the LA City Council, I'm not sure which it was. I mean, that's like the biggest or second biggest law enforcement agency in the country. And they did it because there were just repeated mistakes by the cameras or the computers. I'm not sure where the breakdown was. So it's not reliable. It's subject to abuse. You ask any police chief or sheriff in the country, I'm sure they'll say, "Oh, my officers would never do that." Well, they're wrong. They're doing it, and the dragnet aspect of it is what really offends me. It's not like a red light camera or a speeding camera where you're just clocking somebody who's broken the law by definition by going through the red light or speeding. This is every single person who drives by, and they're getting faces. They're getting dings and dents on your car. They're getting so much information. And as Amy, I think, was saying, or Steve was saying, one reason that people are rising up against this is because of the authoritarian federal government that we have. And they're really frightened about all this information being gathered and then being available to that government, because that government is not going to make benign use of it.
So you're saying if we didn't have the Pete Hegseths and Donald Trumps out there sucking up all the information they can, people wouldn't be as aware and on their guard. They wouldn't be
as afraid. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be as afraid. It would still be happening, but I actually don't know if we'd have this uprising that we are experiencing now.
Interesting.
Because it's so scary. And there's no doubt that this information has been shared with immigration enforcement and used to go after people and find people and detain people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, despite Flock saying, "Oh no, ICE has no access to this," complete nonsense. They absolutely do have
From here, from Santa Cruz.
through all sorts of different ways. So, if I may, for just a quick second more, Amy, the sheriff here does not use ALPRs in Santa Cruz County, and never has, and they've always said, "Oh, we don't use them, we don't need them, we don't like them, it's okay." Well, we just found out fairly recently they're not collecting information, but they're accessing the information through NICRIC, which is I can never remember what it stands for. It's
National Crime Information Center. Is that what it is?
Yeah, there's each state has
System?
one, and,
Yeah.
and all the law enforcement agencies in the state pour information into this one place, and every law enforcement in the state can access that stuff. So Watsonville has 37 cameras.
Yeah.
Capitola has 10, and the sheriff can access the data about those law enforcement agencies and those ALPRs. So it's so pervasive. I think
I imagine the Santa Cruz police chief can too, without even having cameras in Santa Cruz.
anybody, any law enforcement agency in the state can access NICRIC, okay, whether they use them or not. Now, it's maybe a little small-minded, but I'm not as upset about that because they're not picking up local cameras, but they're accessing cameras, from other places. They're not getting anybody from Santa Cruz, but they are getting people from Watsonville and Capitola, and I would venture to guess that most of us go to those places sometime or other.
This is Chris Crone for KSQD Radio, KSQD Santa Cruz, and KSQT Prunedale. Amy Chen Mills, someone wrote a letter to the editor recently in the Santa Cruz Sentinel and said, Chen Mills, quote, I'm quoting, blind fixation on mass surveillance ignores modern reality. Privacy is an illusion in 2026. Utility companies track our energy and water while tech giants scan our emails. With Ring doorbells and private security, cameras are already everywhere. The difference is flock cameras specifically solve crimes by stripping our police of this tool. Chen Mills makes the street safer for criminals and lethal for pedestrians. How do you respond to that?
Well,
That's how I would be laughing.
I first want to say that about the Watsonville cameras and the Capitola cameras, the Get the Flock Out team is still working on trying to get rid of those cameras. And I mean, I've had a request from the Watsonville team to say that, when people are running for city council right now in Watsonville, to be asking if you care about this issue and if you're a voter in Watsonville or a voter in Capitola, to ask these candidates where they stand on this issue. I don't want to dismiss, just because we might not go to Watsonville very often, or we go, 3 times a month or whatever we do, that doesn't mean that the people down there aren't really upset. And we're seeing people actually ram their cars into these cameras now. In Monterey, somebody rammed their truck into several flock cameras and knocked them down. That person's got arrested and was being held with a bail of $30,000. I don't know if they got out or not. Also in Salinas, somebody was cutting them down with some kind of equipment. So this is happening across the country. People are very upset. And I think it would behoove our public officials and our police chiefs to understand why people are so upset and not just sort of resort to the talking points that they have or have been given by Flock and these other companies. Now, in response to that letter, I think I wrote an entire opinion piece for the Sentinel, which you can find on this topic. It hurts to have my name associated with crimes, and so far the crimes that people have cited actually were not, either they were in the city and they were solved right away without the use of flock cameras, or they were in some other city, and I'm not sure why they're relating it to our lack of flock cameras here now, but it personally, it hurts to have that association, and it hasn't changed how I feel about these cameras. When you have access by people who are, whether they're police or whether they're people who are hacking into the cameras, which is something that people have done. People have been able to hack in and view themselves on camera. You have actual exposure to criminal elements whether they're domestic criminal elements or whether they're pedophiles. There are cameras trained on children's playgrounds. There are cameras that have been accessed by Flock executives in children's gymnasiums, in family swimming pools, where we found out that Flock, and this was in Georgia, in Dunwoody, Georgia, someone did a public records request and found that Flock executives were watching these third-party cameras. So somehow they jumped from Flock to a third-party camera, connected the network, and were watching, for hours what was happening at a family swimming pool and in a children's gymnasium. So what you have to understand is setting up these systems is creates a vulnerability for the entire population, where if these systems get hacked, now say you trust your police department, say you think your police department is good, say you trust all police departments, although we've had arrests of police tracking women and stalking them through the cameras. Let's say you trust, though, the police. That doesn't mean that these systems can't be accessed, like Steve was talking about, AI jumping out of its own system. We're in a world where anything can happen now, and data is easily hacked and shared now, and that's not something I want for our community. I don't want that vulnerability for our community, whether it's for activists, whether it's for children, whether it's for women, whether it's for women who are trying to escape an abusive partner, which is also an issue, right? So we've also heard that the login credentials are being sold on the dark web for getting into these Flock data systems. And there's not even, for many police departments, not even multi-factor authentication to log into the system, if you can believe it. I have to log in and get multi-factor authentication just to get into my email account. And yet in some cities, the police don't even have multi-factor authentication set up for these systems. So there's just so much that people need to learn that I think if they did learn and know, they would also oppose.
You talk about Flock executives. Does anybody know who owns Flock, and what's the profit margin, and how much are they making, and how big is the company?
The CEO is Garrett Langley, and their market cap is somewhere around, I think, $4 or $5 billion. And they were funded by, for example, Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, other tech startup groups like that. My understanding now is that the competitive company Axon, which is where a lot of cities are getting rid of Flock, and we'll just get this other, we'll go to Axon cameras. Well, Axon is Donald Trump just invested $5 million into Axon, so we're getting Trump richer, by setting up Axon.
Wow.
And then also we found out that who's the guy that Jeffrey Epstein started a company.
Don't forget about him.
Yeah, he's involved too in Axon, because he started a company
From the grave.
with Ehud Barak, I believe, that was purchased by Axon. They now own this company that Epstein started and funded. That is part of the surveillance, surveillance equipment that is now being used by Axon.
Thank you, Amy Chen Mills. Steve Plach, body cams. A lot of progressives think it's a good thing for police to have body cams. Right now we know that the folks in Maine who shot and killed one of the immigrants recently, the ICE agent, didn't have body cams. But also finding out that body cams provide a lot of footage. Also, they're just when they're on all the time. Body cams, good or bad?
Well, body cams are just a function of modern society. Originally, the concept was that they were supposed to function as kind of a check on the behavior of police activities. They record everything. They're evidence in a court, so you can use them, you can submit them. The problem is that data is so huge that you really can't survey it. Like the case study that I mentioned in the article that I wrote, they were able to use AI to review thousands of hours of body cam footage and actually create a database. And they said, well, there were a certain number of constitutional violations and certain improprieties. We have here our police auditor and IG, Mike Giannato and his folks have limited access to body cameras. But if they had unlimited access, they don't have the staff or the time to really survey it to the point where you could establish a database and say, you know what, the police in Santa Cruz, because we have the data, are committing thus and so violations. Their behavior is not according to constitutional procedures. We just can't do that.
Could you tell us what
the quantum of evidence is so huge?
What's a police auditor? Just
Oh, there's the police auditors,
Footnote
Mike
here.
Janako, the OIR.
what
group.
is a police auditor? What do they do?
Well, Steve, you got a better answer than I might have.
I'm not sure what you might have, but I'll take a
Peter
shot
Gelblum.
at it. It's an independent body, woefully underfunded. There's about 2 or 3 people working on it here. I don't even know if they're full time on it, and they have the statutory or contractual right to audit the police files, audit complaints, review all their complaints, and they do. And the same company happens to be both the independent police auditor for the SCPD. I don't even know if Watsonville or Capitola have independent auditors.
Not to my knowledge.
And for
This came about as in lieu of the police review board, right? It was kind of a post-police review board.
Much weaker.
No, we've always
Yeah,
had
no,
a
it's
police auditor.
weaker, but I'm saying it was an alternative. It was sold to the council, I remember, as an alternative. Instead of having a police review board, we're going to have an auditor now that's going to look at the police.
It could be. And there's an inspector general, the same people for the sheriff. It's just different
Mm-hmm.
names, same thing. They have the right to audit and access to police officers, police files, police records, and they report to the city council, the board of supervisors on an annual basis. They hold community meetings to get input from the community. If somebody has a complaint about a law enforcement officer, they can contact the auditor indirectly, or directly, or the inspector general directly, instead of going through the law enforcement agency themselves. It's better than nothing, but it's pretty weak, and they don't have any power to make any changes.
So they just make recommendations, but they don't even have enough staff to look at this body cam footage.
Well, not to look at all. I mean, if there's a specific complaint, then they can get access to the body footage regarding that complaint. They can't look through it all to see if anything bad is happening. But if a citizen, or a resident rather, makes a complaint, then they can go and look at that stuff.
Is that the only time the auditor acts on something? I mean,
No.
they don't go out and investigate themselves, do they?
No, they don't. They have the theoretical right to do that, at least with the sheriff. I'm not sure with the police. They have the theoretical right to do that if the sheriff is not forthcoming with their information. So far, the same company, it's called OIR Group, they're based in Southern California, that provides our auditor and inspector general for SCPD and the sheriff. They have been pleased with the cooperation they've been getting from the law enforcement agencies, and they make recommendations behind the scenes mainly about policy changes, and most of those policy changes that they recommend have been made. I wanted to come back to something that you asked Amy about.
Can you
Yes,
hold it?
I can
We're
hold it.
bumping up
Sure.
against the half hour. This is Chris Crone for KSQD 90.7 and KSQD.org. I can't believe a half hour has just slipped by. We have Steve Plaish, community activist. We have Peter Gelblum, who is the chair of the Santa Cruz ACLU for Northern California, and Amy Chen Mills, candidate for mayor and also an activist in Get the Flock Out. We'll be right back in a Santa Cruz second. We are back. This is Chris Crone for Talk of the Bay. This is part 2 of the show. We're talking about the surveillance state. And just when we were going to break, Peter Gelblum had something to say about who wants more surveillance. I mean,
Well, the part of the letter that you wrote about Amy that
I
you
read
to her, yeah. The person's argument basically was, "Come on, get over it. We're surveilled all the time anyway. I mean, what's one more?" I mean, you can throw your hands up and say, "Okay, it's all over. So what? So why?" And that's certainly not my attitude. I want as little surveillance as I can, and I do want to stop as much as I can. Other than ALPRs, there's nobody else tracking my as far as I know, tracking my driving around the city or the county. So that's an additional thing that I don't want.
But you don't know it. I mean, because it's in the back of your mind now. Not that you're going to be on the police radar screen, but it's in the back of your mind because they have the technology now.
Absolutely. My wife and I just flown a couple of times recently, and when you check in, at least at San Jose, they want you to take a picture. You can say no, by the way, which we do. We always say no. And this time, the guy said, "Geez, you're on camera 5 times already before you got to me, and don't be so paranoid." All right, whatever. I don't think it's paranoia. I think paranoia is when it's like there's no reality to what you're...
I didn't know you could say no.
You can say no. That's a good thing to know.
I say no every time.
So do I.
Yeah, and they've told me the same thing. You've already been on camera quite a bit. I'm like, well, then here's one less
Right.
camera that I'm going to be on.
Yeah, and I wanted, Amy can talk about this better than any of us. In addition to Amy's amazing work to get the flock out, I mean, we could talk the whole time about that story. What, 5 or 6 months it took from the beginning to the council canceling the contract. Really extraordinary. She really stands in stark contrast with her opponent in this race. I don't know if we can talk about that. We can, but he's not just neutral on it. He's like pro surveillance. All I know is that he's advisor to the San Jose mayor,
Matt Mahan.
Matt Mahan.
And so you're speaking of Amy Chen Mills, who's a candidate for mayor.
Yes.
And we're also speaking of Ryan Coonerty, who was invited to be on the show. It didn't fit into his schedule for today, and I hope to have him on a future show. Love to have him on talking about these issues. Go ahead.
But he, the vote that we won, the city council, was not to never have ALPRs. It was to cancel this contract, but there was a second phrase that says, directed the staff, look into other companies, and if you can come back with one that doesn't have all the shortcomings of Flock, we'll think about it again. Okay, so, and I think that if people are concerned about that, then they really need to look to Amy and not to Ryan, because Ryan, I think, is going to turbocharge that effort and try to bring him back, is my guess. Amy?
All right. I like the way he's Amy Chen Mills, candidate for mayor. Peter Gelbom's passing the mic to you.
Yeah, I think that's true. He has said that he supports ALPRs, and he may sort of nominally agree with what the city decided on these particular ALPRs, but he has already talked about in forums that he's interested in another company, and that I should be interested in another company too. I should be more flexible. I think that part of this, and I just want to share this from my heart, is, are we going to have hope or not? Are we going to have hope that there's a way that we might overcome this administration? Are we going to have hope that there's a way that we can push back on the tech oligarchy that is actually actively trying to monitor everyone in this country, that first developed this, Palantir, for example, Peter Thiel's company was first developed to monitor immigrants and to be used specifically for Customs and Border Protection enforcement. So if we're interested in resisting, if we're interested in a new future, and a future where we actually have human and civil rights for all of us, then we need to start resisting somewhere. We need to start locally where we have some power. And that's what I'm interested in, not just in relation to ALPRs, but in relation to data centers, the hyperscale and AI data centers that communities are rejecting because of their noise, because of their tremendous energy use, because they're heating up the atmosphere around them, because they're displacing neighborhoods. This is like greed on steroids. This is so insane.
But people think it's inevitable. It's just progress, Amy.
But that is part of the authoritarian playbook, is to actually to try to encourage this defeatist attitude. It's too late already. There's nothing we can do, and I just refuse to accept that.
Well, what can we do?
Well, we can cancel the ALPR contract. We can have a comprehensive data broker legislation in the city where we're protecting people from these kinds of technologies, including the drones that San Francisco police are using now. San Francisco police have these tiny drones that can get you from very high up. I mean, they have in San Francisco, what's happening is Chris Larson of the cryptocurrency company Ripple has funded the police to the tune of like $5 million to set up a surveillance operation in one of his office buildings, but it's actually owned by Donald Trump. So the police are set up in a building owned by Donald Trump, getting all this private money for surveillance to where you start to wonder, who are they going to be looking out for the most, and who are they going to be looking out for the least with all of this surveillance? Right? If Chris Larson commits a crime, are the police going to be on top of it when they've been getting millions of dollars from these tech oligarchs who live in San Francisco and support the current mayor and the current board of supervisors?
And we were just talking about housing. Housing's going way up in San Francisco because of the AI craze. Steve Plate, right up your alley, another Sentinel letter, quote, "These cameras record. How long that data is retained is of concern, and who and what entities have access is also a concern. Add to that, how AI is evaluating this data is a major concern. AI algorithms make mistakes. That is well known. It will get better, yet there will always be errors. We must guard against releasing our decisions to a machine."
No, I
End
couldn't have
quote.
said that better myself. As I said earlier, even the people who are developing AI don't know what its potential is. It's one of those situations where people are so enamored with the fact that they can do something that they'd never consider whether they should do it. And now we have an opportunity here to really examine that and see what we can do. I will say, and this is a great discussion about ALPRs, I couldn't be prouder as an ACLU board member of our collaboration with Get the Flock Out. When we were able to persuade what is generally viewed as a very conservative city council to cancel a contract that they had entered into is a phenomenal accomplishment.
It blew me away.
And it gives me hope that we can, in collaboration as we move forward with Amy's leadership and Peter's, to really go out and make this a crusade and make people aware of how dangerous to personal privacy ALPRs are. I wrote an article on ALPRs. This is not a new issue for me. I wrote and published an article several years ago about the dangers of ALPRs, the dangers of batch collection of data.
Automatic license plate readers.
Yeah,
just for
automatic
folks
license plate readers. And, as several of our chapter members have said, the only way to protect your data in terms of personal privacy is not to collect it at all. Otherwise, once it's collected, it's almost impossible to really ensure its privacy.
Peter,
so that's what I have to say about that.
Peter, then Amy, on just like where AI comes into all this and why we're giving our data up to these machines.
Because we can.
Yeah.
I think what Steve said is this, because you can do it. Technology is advancing. It's going to keep advancing. You can't stop it. But the question needs to be asked is, should we do that? Should we do those things? The article Steve mentioned, or the incident Steve mentioned about the AI agent leaving its test enclosure. It was a OpenAI machine.
That's right.
And it, on its own,
On its
totally
own,
autonomously, got onto the internet. Wasn't supposed to. Got on the internet, searched, found another company, got into that company's computer system, and stole information from that computer system, totally on its own. I mean, it was so frightening. And these are these are not evil people trying to do harm. Harm was done by the AI agent without any human contact. So it's really frightening. That incident frightened the hell out of me. And it can be used for good things. It can help analyze data, obviously, at a scale that we can't do, that humans can't do, or not as fast. But it's really dangerous and needs to be controlled.
Steve, quick comment, and then we're going to go to Amy Chen Mills.
And what's additionally frightening to me about this is that the companies invaded say, "Oh, that's okay, no harm done." It's like an old boys network already. In terms of this AI generation, and it's just astounding to me.
Well,
that
just
they
dutifully
that people-
working for the
that people
boss.
would not be concerned about that.
Amy Chen Mills.
Yes. Did you have a question?
No, I just thought on
That's
what,
right.
I know something's on your mind.
Well,
Okay, I do have a question.
Okay.
We were just doing a lot of campaigning. Okay, we're knocking on doors, we're talking to people, and I was just shocked because I hadn't walked around neighborhoods since 2016. The last time I campaigned for office. How many Ring cameras are out there? I don't know if you encountered this, but I was shocked. And then these voices come out of nowhere, and somebody might be in the Bahamas or they might be in New York, and they said, "What are you doing at my door? What do you want?" So did you encounter this? What I'm going to get everybody's view on the Ring camera data collection.
Yeah, there was this famous ad at the Super Bowl where Ring cameras were saying, "Hey, guess what? We can help find your dog."
Fifi.
And we'll find it, because they had this neighborhood network thing going on, because you think that you own that data and you never actually do. So the data is stored in a cloud somewhere. That's the other danger, where as I've been saying, we don't understand what's happening in the back door, in the back room of where this data is being stored. We don't store it at our house. We don't store it on a server at our house. We're storing it on a cloud somewhere. And so they were linking everything together. And when people were watching the Super Bowl and they saw, oh my gosh, I guess you could track a dog and find a dog, they immediately started to see that actually they could track a person and find a
Backfired.
person walking through the neighborhood. And interestingly, after that, Flock actually canceled its Ring Cam, which I believe is Amazon. Is that right? It's an Amazon
I
company.
think it is, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They canceled their contract with Flock, and I think it was to try to save some semblance of like respectability with the public, their reputation, because Flock is kind of going down in flames at the moment. And what we have to be careful about is people want to replace. And I did want to say something about the inevitability too. Like, I can leave my phone at home. If I drive a car that has GPS, maybe that would give my location out to some company, but I can also drive a used car. I can still get out of my house and travel around without being tracked if I leave my phone at home, if I get a burner phone. I think it's really important for us to be able to go off grid. The other thing that's concerning to me, and we can't do that with Flock because everywhere you drive and even walk, because these are picking up people, picking up bicycles, can be surveilled. And that is not okay with me, to have all of our public spaces be under surveillance. I also think the thing we have to be careful about in the city is they're starting to install parking systems for pay parking systems that are only through an app like Parkmobile, right? And so then now you're feeding your data to Parkmobile. If you have cash, you can't even use it at that parking lot. What if you don't have the app? What if you don't want the app? What if you don't have a credit card, which you need for the app, right? And you don't have credit, say you're indigent, you don't have a lot of money, and you just need to park. So anyway, that's another thing that's part of my campaign is we're going to always accept cash, because that's another way that you can just go off grid. I just think it's important to be able to go off grid.
Steve or Peter, do you have a comment about Ring Cam?
I do. Ring cams is just the opening opportunity to invite, if you would, pardon the pun, AI into your home, because they're going to start having ring cameras. They're AI assisted, and there's just no limit to what that information, what that data is being collected, how it's being collected. You have facial recognition that's involved. You have data collection that's involved. It's extremely dangerous, in my opinion.
Okay, Peter.
Yeah, like with body cams, there are some legitimate uses for it, but it has to be controlled. And the problem a lot of us are having, that society's having now, is how to control them. It's very difficult to control these things once they're out of the bottle.
Our esteemed engineer, Nyanko, has a question for all of you.
Yes, this is Nyanko. This is Nyanko here. Well, continuing what Amy was saying about leaving your phone at home, that is a good idea, because even if you turn your iPhone off, it is still trackable, believe it or not. And there's this company called Signal Trace. I don't know if you've been reading about it, but essentially they're developing technology that could be used alongside the ALPR cameras to basically track every kind of device that you have in the car or in proximity of the ALPR camera, like your Apple Watch, your iPhone, your Android phone, AirTags, your headphones, your little Apple earpods. All that can be tracked, and so when you're in the store, for instance, just because you have your phone with you, pricing could change in items in certain stores where they have all their pricing,
dynamic pricing.
Yeah, dynamic pricing, and there's already some states, and especially here in California, where they're looking to eliminate that practice.
Is there a question in that?
No, that's just
that's a comment.
That's
okay.
A comment.
Okay.
That's a comment.
Well, and I want to say that
Yes.
Signal Track program, it's another device that they put on top of the Flock cameras, so that they're now not just tracing your car and catching your car, but every device in your car, including your Bluetooth devices.
Possibly even your pets too, if they have transponders in them.
So what do you all think the future looks like? I mean, are we treading against this river, and we're floating? We're just like trying, and we're being called conspiracy theorists a lot of times. Some of the letters to the editor were talked about that. What does the future look like, and how do we fight or struggle or vote against a future that is basically empowers the surveillance state?
Vote. It's that's the bottom line as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you can do your personal things like Amy was talking about, leaving your phone at home, using a rental car. Those all give you some inconvenience, but you gotta weigh your interests. But the bottom line for me is vote. I'm not a believer in it doesn't matter, they're all the same. That's just not true. and the future, our future, will depend on who's making the laws and who's enforcing the laws.
Steve?
Honestly, I think the genie's out of the bottle. As I was saying, the people that are developing artificial intelligence can't control it. It's so far outstripping their ability to understand what it can do and what it is doing that I don't think there's any way for them to control it. Voting and talking to your supervisors, your council, maybe that's a good idea. The county board of supervisors passed in September of 2023 what they call an artificial intelligence appropriate use policy, which is now about 3 years out of date. So it moves so quickly that we're running to catch up. And as we're doing so, we're losing our personal privacies all along the way, in every way that we can possibly imagine. How we can control that, I'm not really sure.
Well,
But don't give up.
Let's turn to Ms. Hopeful. She, I wanted to say hope, but verify. But you're hopeful that we can actually catch up.
Amy, you're
Amy
our
Chen
only
Mills.
hope. You're our only hope.
Oh gosh. Well, I think that hope is just a choice to do the right thing, no matter what the circumstances are. I think that that's the choice that we all have in front of us all the time. And I think that it's a choice that, for me, feels much better than succumbing or giving in to despair. And I also think that sometimes it's true that the darkest hour comes before the dawn. In terms of, my goodness, a lot of conservatives, this is a bipartisan issue, the ALPR issue. It's also a bipartisan issue, these hyperscale and AI data centers that they're trying to put up everywhere. And they have been stopped in hundreds of cities. There's a moratorium on all data centers in New York. The data centers are what AI needs to power itself. So the grassroots activism that is bipartisan that we're seeing, that people don't want to be tracked, they don't want their privacy infringed upon, they don't want data centers next to their homes or in their neighborhoods or on their farmlands or what have you, or on their state parks or national parks, which is now what Trump is proposing. We can unite around these issues, and we can organize locally, and that is a way to put a huge bump in the road for the AI industry. And the AI industry also might crash because they're living on borrowed money.
Sure they are.
And unfortunately, they'll take us down with them. But I don't know that they're actually really on a trajectory for huge success and growth.
So Steve Place,
I agree with Amy, and I also have hope.
We're putting
that
the
we can
genie back in the
control it.
bottle.
But I don't think there's any way to do that. But nevertheless, I am encouraged by the fact there's so much pushback on the data centers, and you see that every day. And different communities, different municipalities say we don't want them. We don't want data centers. So if that's a way to control, you can't have a data center. You can't have AI expanding without data centers being established somewhere. Then I agree that that's a hopeful sign.
Is it different than the pushback on the battery plants?
That's a completely different issue.
Mm-hmm. That's a safety issue.
That's a toxicity and environmental issue.
Yeah.
These are not these. They create a whole lot of power usage, so that drains power from other areas and stuff like that. So that's really the main issue.
Well, it's supposed to supply power. It's supposed to go, get rid of fossil fuels. We need these battery plants.
Well, data centers consume a tremendous amount of power.
That's true.
The batteries, that's.
So
Peter Gelblum.
I just want to amend my one-word answer about voting.
Please.
You got to vote, but you got to, even before that, you have to organize.
Mm-hmm.
You have to organize and get organized, but do it yourself if nobody else is doing it. But you got to organize to put pressure on the people who are elected. So that I don't know which comes first, what's chicken and the egg, but you got to vote and you have to organize. But your organization, your elected officials have to be susceptible, as the city council was here, to everybody's amazement, to the organized effort.
And Amy Chen Mills, you are running right now for mayor. You are organizing committees of various sorts, but you're hammering away at this surveillance state issue and this technology issue. Are you at all worried about becoming like a one-trick pony, a one-issue candidate?
Are you talking about committees for policy study, which I have been organizing on housing and on homelessness and on our urban environment? No, because I am organizing those committees and I'm talking to people who are very much in the know in our community from all sides of the issue to come up with policies that I think are reasonable and also sometimes I have felt like with what I would call the Santa Cruz Together, cabal of the city council, we can't have nice things. This is why we can't have nice things, because we're not allowed to have progressive imagination and innovation in our city, and we really need creative, out of the box thinking. And there was something else I was going to say about this race, and I want to bring it up here because
Please.
It's something we just found out, which is that my opponent, Ryan Coonerty, I've invited him to take the expenditure cap, $52,000, 52 plus change.
Which seems like a lot of money in Santa Cruz.
It seems like a lot of money, but already we're looking at a race where he might have enough donations to max out at like $200,000, $150,000 in this. This would be the most expensive council race in Santa Cruz history, more expensive than the race of Fred Keeley against Joy Schendeldecker for the first go round. And we are seeing donations come in from the CFO of OpenAI. Donations for Ryan Coonerty. Thank you from the CFO for OpenAI, from the I think the partner manager person for Coinbase, for the Meta privacy director, who actually lives in town, is married to Ryan's sister. So there are all these things I'm discovering where I'm like, is this what we want? I mean, I'm not completely anti-tech. I have my phone. I use tech. I use different things on the computer and softwares and so forth. I try to avoid AI. My campaign is AI free. But we really, moratoriums, I think, are a good thing. It's a pause. Let's pause until we can really feel like this is safe for us. And I don't feel like most Santa Cruz residents and American citizens and residents actually feel like any of this is safe or good for them or will be beneficial.
Steve Pleisch, local activist. How realistic is Amy? How can we pause this? Any suggestions or any
years ago, and I can't even remember what the issue was. And when I was running for city elections, and I totally feel in empathy with Amy. I ran against Ryan in 2018 for the 3rd District Supervisor, and I know how much money he can raise and how much visibility he can have. But, we at the time for the issue, we just said, we don't want to stop this, but let's just press pause. Let's just do that. Consider that, if you will. You don't have to abandon this idea. You don't have to put it in the back burner. You don't have to do anything with it. Let's just press pause and give it some thoughtful consideration. And to characterize even lightly that Amy is a one-trick pony is ridiculous. She is certainly broad enough in her outlook and able enough in her abilities to entertain a number of issues that are beneficial to the city, in addition to the great work that she's doing to get the flock out. As I said, the ACLU is really proud to be working with these folks who do tremendous work, and Amy is the standard bearer for that.
Peter Gelblum, you want to jump in here? We have about 2 minutes left, or less than 2 minutes. Closing statement, closing thought.
I repeat, organize and vote, give it serious consideration, and don't give up. Don't give in. As Amy said, it's the tool of authoritarians is to make things seem inevitable, and that there's no point in doing anything about it because you're going to lose. And
how do people get involved with the local ACLU?
Oh, they can contact me. We have a Facebook page with an email address on it, and we have an email list. It's over 300 people now, where we notify people of events and of issues and of forums and things like that.
What's the big forum coming up?
Nothing scheduled right now.
August 18th.
It's not a forum. That's August 16th is the opening act of the Bay Area's participation in the National Week of Action Against ALPR.
Okay, Amy Chen Mills,
here because we were the first.
Last
to cancel.
word.
Yeah, I would say go to that rally and then come to our kickoff for the campaign. If you're interested in my campaign, whether you support me or not, August 18th on Tuesday at Woodhouse Brewery. You'll meet me. You'll meet my team. You'll dance to the Puffball Collective and hear Lyrical Eye and hear George Kahumoko Jr., the Grammy Award-winning slack key guitarist. So that's all on Tuesday, August 18th. And you can also find me at Amy Chen Mills, AMICHEN Mills.com.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much to our guest, local activist Steve Pleisch, ACL Board Chair of Santa Cruz County, Peter Gelblum, and candidate for mayor of Santa Cruz, Amy Chen Mills. Thanks also to our incomparable soundboard engineer, Nyanko Nayasu. This show is about getting informed and being involved. Don't mourn, organize. Good luck and good night, Santa Cruz.